Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love money, mine. Love money, mine. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna, and welcome to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Roger Williams. Roger is a writer, podcaster, adventurer, and head crosser offer of his bucket list. After more than 30 years working in the youth development and teaching field, a year in quarantine, 2 heart attacks, Roger embarked on an adult gap year to prioritise a life in which he's known not by his professional work, but by the way he lives his life and the people he grows relationships with. He's just completed a 3-month journey travelling around the world to cross items off his bucket list and inspiring others to do the same. His new book, Living Out Your List, Finding Joy Through a Bucket List Lifestyle, was recently released and gives practical tips and suggestions he has learned to enable others to intentionally find joy in their lives through living out their bucket list. I know I've ticked off lots of things off my bucket list, and speaking to Roger, it really made me realise that there's more things that I need to be ticking off. So you're going to absolutely love this episode if you're somebody that has got things to do and wants to see the world and has got lots of different things on your bucket list. So hi, Roger from Seattle. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
It's funny, isn't it? When we're looking at each other on camera, you've got natural lighting and I've got this fake evening lighting. I love this podcast because we can just connect from wherever we are in the world.
Exactly.
So it's great to have you on. And I know I was doing a bit of research about you, and I'm sure everybody listening loves to think about those things on their bucket list, but maybe are they really doing it? And I know you're the head crosser offer of your bucket list. So I'm really curious to find out how this really all came about. How did it all start?
Yeah, sure. So you are correct. In the States, there have been surveys done that 95% of people say they have a bucket list, but other surveys say only 40% of people cross it off. So hopefully we'll reach out to those 55% in your audience and help them get them motivated and engaged in doing that. But for me, that process was after 30 plus years of a career in youth development work with NGOs and schools and churches and all sorts of stuff. And the first year of quarantine and lockdown, living through that. And at the end of 2020 in December, I had a heart attack right before the first of the year in 2021. And so it just, when you're faced with mortality like that, I just started thinking about where I found my self-worth. And typically, at least here in the States, when you meet someone new, you say, what do you do? And the answer to that question is always who you sell your labor to and how you sell your labor to them. And that becomes where we find our self-worth, especially over here in the States. And I was just tired of that. Even though I worked in a field where so many people would say to me, oh, that must be so rewarding, the work that you do with young people, and you must get so much out of that. And it's like, I did, but at the same time, it was hard. It was work. It was a job, just like anybody else has a job. And so I just decided that I wanted to be known for something different. So I went to all my social media accounts and changed my job title and who I worked for as being the head crosser offer of my own bucket list.
Yeah, love it. It's funny you should mention that question, because I've spoken about that a lot on the podcast, about how we go into a social setting or even a business setting, and it's all like, what do you do? And we just identify people by what they do. And I in previous episodes, I've discussed about how I like to look at it as like, what's your story? Which again is kind of like all the stuff that you've done, rather than being identified by this thing that, like you say, that you work basically.
Right.
We all know, like in those social settings, it's always like, oh, doctors and police officers, and we put all these hierarchies on these like jobs as such, but we know good and bad of all of them.
Exactly.
So it's interesting you bring that up, and I'm really curious because I think also you have like the wake-up call, which is obviously the heart attack, I think a lot of people that I've interviewed on this podcast have all had like a life event that's woken them up a bit, you know.
Yeah.
And I did myself, and I think since then I have done more things on my bucket list, but I'm definitely probably one of those people that need to do more. I keep saying that I'm going to go to Dubai and jump out of a plane on the palm.
That's the place to do it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have that on their bucket list, but I'm just like, I don't want to do that over farm country, or I want to do it.
Exactly.
I want to do it where someplace where it's really cool to look down at the ground and see some neat stuff from a different perspective.
Definitely. So tell us then how you can help people cross these bucket lists. What is it you do that helps people move forward? Because I'm sure a lot of the listeners are thinking, well, I've got all these things on my bucket list, I've just not got around to doing them.
Yeah, and the first thing for me after that experience of being in lockdown and going through this heart attack and trying to figure out who I was one of those 55% of people. Like I said, would say I have a bucket list, but I never wrote it down. I wasn't doing anything to cross anything off of it. And that's really the first step, right? Is to decide, okay, I'm going to go do this. And so actually creating a list in some form or fashion is one of the things you can start by doing that. The other thing for me is that I'm really passionate about is that people set an intention for their bucket list, right? If we're going to go out and we're going to start a business, or we're going to start an NGO or a nonprofit, and we're going to have a mission statement of why we're doing this. What's the purpose of this? Why are we investing our time, talent, and money into this thing? And I feel like the bucket list is the same way. If you don't set an intention, then you're just kind of trying to, like we say over here, keeping up with the Joneses. You're just doing things to do them and without much purpose. And so I really promote to people to find what their purpose is for their bucket list. What is your intention? And so for me, it was community. Community's always been a big deal to me, whether that's being in community or helping create community. I always wanted to whatever I did to be about building community, even in the workplace, all those things. And so I had something on my bucket list for a really long time, at least in my head. And when I finally wrote down my list, I was like, this is the top thing. And it was walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And it was just like, I have for 11 years, I had this in my head. I'd done research, watched movies, watched YouTube videos, I'd done all this stuff. And it's like, okay, as an Aquarius, I'm a little flighty. I have lots of ideas, but I never do any of them. And so it wasn't for everyone else, like to prove anything to anyone else. It was to prove something to myself. It was to say, even in the middle of this pandemic, I'm going to buy this plane ticket, not being sure yet if Spain is going to be open, not sure if the hostels are going to be open or restaurants are going to be open or anything. I was just like, I'm going to go do this. And if it turns out I can't get into the country, then I will just postpone it. But I'm going to make the commitment of buying that ticket. And that was a huge deal for me because it really solidified that, okay, I can dream up something, or I can put something on a list and I can accomplish it. So it was really important for me to write it down. And really, I'm a big fan of actually getting out a piece of paper and getting out a pen and writing the things down, because for me, a bucket list, it isn't complete until you can cross it off. So I want to make sure that when I'm done with something, that was the best part of coming home from Spain. It was the first thing I did. I grabbed my list and I took that pen and I literally crossed off, walk the Camino. And so I think setting an intention and then creating that list is really important.
Yeah, I think that's really good, actually, because it's got me thinking. Because I'm always writing, I'm always like focused on manifestation, but not to the point where I'm just going to manifest it, it's going to happen. It's more like manifest it and then do the goddamn work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't just say, hey, I want this, and it's going to miraculously arrive. But I'm always writing things down because it keeps my focus on what I want to achieve. Do you know what I mean? So I can see how the bucket list stuff, because some of that stuff actually links the two, Some of those goals are, because it's all lifestyle stuff for me anyway, rather than like, I want 7 figures. It's more like the time has become more important for me over the years. So it's more experience stuff anyway. So I definitely think writing it down, but I like the intention stuff as well, because you have to have that intention. Otherwise, the reason why you're doing it all
Yeah, and for me, if you haven't written down your list, starting with the intention allows you to have focus as you create your list. Like in my,
Yeah.
I have a book, and it has multiple sections, but one of the sections is how, bucket list creation. And but before that, it is set that intention, because as you create your list, you're going to be able to look at that list of the thing, or think of that thing and go, how does that relate back to my intention for my list? So for me, like I said, everything's communal, or most things are communal. And so when I was making my list, I put on there things that I thought I would either do with other people, or that I would meet other people while I was doing them. And that's super important to me. And even with the Camino, that people do the Camino de Santiago for tons of different reasons. Some people do it for religious reasons. Some people do it for health reasons. Some people do it for spiritual reasons. There's lots of different reasons. For me, it was, I just want to go and build community. And so I met dozens and dozens and dozens of people from all over the world that I never would have met sitting on my couch watching Netflix at home. And and so when I got done, so many people finished the Camino, and they're like, all right, let's go back and start again, right? They enjoyed the experience. And for me, I loved it. It was great. It was everything I wanted, even with a bad leg, and losing my voice one day, and trying to keep up with the schedule and all those things that made it difficult. I still, at the end of it, was like, I did what I accomplished, and I accomplished what I wanted to do, and that was super important to me. And I walked away with some people call it their Camino family, and I've used that to also decide on other things that I want to cross off my bucket list, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But as long as that you have that drive, what is driving you? What is your purpose? You can create that list. So some of the other things I've had on my list is crash a wedding, where I did meet some new people when I did that. There's a world championship of barbecue in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm going to go with a couple of my high school buddies to do that.
What was that? What was that? I've not even heard of that. What was that?
The world championship of barbecue.
Yeah, I've not heard of that.
Okay, so it's a huge barbecue competition in Memphis, Tennessee. It lasts a weekend, it's 3 days. We haven't done it. We're going to do it this May. And it's, there's people from all over the United States that come and try to win money based on the value of their barbecue. So that they put up tents, and you can go around, and people have specialties. Some people do fish, some people do chicken, some people do beef. There's people that just barbecue vegetables, or tofu. It's just the whole 9 yards, and several 100,000 people, and you buy tickets, and you give the vendor a ticket, and they give you a taste of their food. So it's a lot of fun, and it's just something for my buddies and I to do. I'm also looking at doing punk rock bowling this year for the first time, which is a huge punk rock music festival in Las Vegas, Nevada. And they have punk music all weekend long, but then they also have a bowling tournament, a charity bowling tournament. So you could wind up playing, bowling next to the guys from Rancid, or some punk rock band. And I've told the people I'm recruiting a team, and I've told them, I said, I don't care if I win, I just want to play. I don't in the tournament. So it doesn't matter if you're good or you're bad. We're just going to have a good time. I'm going to go see shows. If you don't want to, if you're not into punk rock music, that's fine. You can go back to the hotel. You can go see Sigmund or Siegfried and Roy, if that's what you want to do. Whatever it is you want to do, we don't have to be together the whole time. But I'd like to do this, and then I've invited some friends to go do it with me. So I try to do just things that I either know people or I get to know people, and hopefully both in the process.
Yeah, I love it. They sound amazing. There's some things I've not heard of ever. So really exciting. What would you say to someone who has never really thought about bucket list? Because I think there are quite a few people like that. Maybe the type that are thinking, in my retirement, I will do this, which is how I was many, many years ago before I started working online. But I think I forget that people might still think like that. What would you say to kind of inspire them to? Because I think you having that event with your health, it will awaken you up, won't it? And I think a lot of people are on this sort of treadmill of life, aren't they, where they're planning for retirement, but we don't know if we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the bucket list movement or lifestyle or whatever you want to call it is that there is no reference to bucket list or the concept of a bucket list in the English lexicon before 2007 when that movie came out.
wow.
So it's a fairly new concept. I think people had always, like you say, they'd been waiting for retirement. They knew when they were retired, they'll do these things. But to really say, I want to do these things before I die is fairly new concept. 15, 17 years old. It's not real new. And so people that have a lot of life experience, I'll say, tend to be the people that don't have bucket lists. A lot of the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zs, they've really attached themselves to this and are building their lives around this kind of lifestyle, that they're going to go out. They're not just going to work 9 hours a day and then go home and be exhausted and, take care of the kids, go to sleep, and then do it all again. That they're really ordering their lives around saying, I'm going to go live now when I'm young. For older folks that may have not embraced this and have been thinking like you and I, that we'll just wait. What I like to say to people is that, we all have 168 hours in the week. Every one of us, we all have 168 hours. And when you break that down, if you work 40 or 50 and you sleep for 45, 50, you still have almost 70, 80 hours a week that you get to devote to something else. And when you set boundaries with work, which I think is super important, like we hear now is corporations and institutions saying, we want you to have work-life balance. We want you to have work-life balance. It's a total lie. They don't.
It's a total lie.
It's a total lie. They don't want you to do that, because now what has happened when we see them talking about all that right before the pandemic and after the pandemic or during it. And now what they're calling those people that say, okay, you want me to have work-life balance? That means I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do what you paid me to do. And now corporations are calling those people quiet quitters. That's a term that we're seeing a lot now, that people are saying, oh, well, you're just doing the bare minimum. Well, no, I'm doing what you said you were going to pay me to do. If that's the bare minimum, then that's the bare minimum, but I'm not doing less than what you've asked me to do. So setting some boundaries of not taking text messages after you leave the office, or not checking your email, or whatever it is for you, right? Or if you're a nurse, making sure that you're not completely 100% exhausted, to make sure you're taking your breaks during the day so that you can get some rest, so that when you walk in the door, when you get home at night, you're not, barely able to fix your family food and watch TV and go to bed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of it, is we have these 80 hours. So just inside that, there's no work-life balance, because life should be the 80 hours and work should be the 40 or 50. And you can't balance those two numbers. They do not equal each other in any stretch of the imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you should be able to find, right, even if it's something small. I think that's another misconception I write about in my book about bucket lists, is that your bucket list has to be these grand super adventures, these exotic places, and places that you see everybody taking pictures on Instagram and putting them up, riding hot air balloons in Cappadocia. It's like that's what you see as a bucket list item. But I know people, and I coach people that, it's whatever brings you joy. It's whatever fulfills your intention. That's what you should be focusing on in those 70, 80 hours. So I have a client that I work with where we went round and round for a little bit, and she's like, I don't want to travel. I'm not that confident. I don't want to put myself out there. I'm single. It's not what I want. I'm like, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to do those crazy amazing things, then what is it that you like to do? And she goes, I really love Thai food, but I'm not good at cooking it. It's very hard to cook Thai food. And I said, well, write down six of the recipes that are your favorite. And she wrote them down. I said, there's your bucket list.
Yeah.
Right. That her bucket list all just consists of Thai recipes that she wants to learn to cook. So she takes one a month, and she cooks it 4 or 5 times a month until she feels like she's nailed it or gotten it close as she's going to get it. And then she crosses it off and she moves on to the next item.
Love it.
It doesn't have to be these, like I said, crazy adventures that you're
Yeah,
traveling the world. I mean, those things are fun and I do them and they're on my list, but I spent a whole day in near London just going to Ted Lasso filming sites one day last May. Like that was my day. But it was all about me. I love the show. I wanted to see those places where they filmed. I ate the Princess Head where the bar is, where the pub is, and I did all those. I went and found the practice pitch and got permission to take pictures. And I mean, I had the biggest smile on my face. My face hurt because I was smiling so much because it brought me joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
My mom and my sister and so-and-so's great uncle Jimmy all had ideas about what I should do when I go to London. Right. And the things that I should see when I go to London. You have to do this and you have to go to this museum. And I'm like, no, I have to do what brings me joy. And that day was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's all really personal to everybody. I talk a lot about my 3 pillars because basically I went through a really difficult time in 2015 when I left my abusive marriage. And after that, there was certain things that I wanted to do. And, that's why it's the Freedom podcast, all about being free from it all. But I have these 3 pillars, which is freedom in love, freedom in money, and freedom in mind. Those are the 3 things that have given me equilibrium. But the love part is really about what brings us joy and self-care. Because like you say, we're on this especially now in this digital world where we can't turn off on WhatsApp and, all these social platforms. We're so contactable, aren't we? And it's hard sometimes to have those boundaries, like you were saying, just switch off from the day. So the freedom in love part is around self-care, self-love, and basically doing things for you. And then obviously freedom in money is financial freedom helps, but it's not all about money. Because when I was struggling financially, the seesaw bounce was stressful. And then mindset, because that sort of encompasses it all. And so it's really interesting what you were saying about the lady that you were coaching around Thai stuff, because it is sometimes just those simple things that you may never really got around to doing or want to do or experience. It doesn't have to be, like you say, jumping off a plane in Dubai.
Yeah, I mean, it brought her joy. It brought her a ton of joy. And that's what's most important. And we have to, get over this idea that other people or other things are going to bring us joy. We are responsible for that for ourselves. And so that's been one of the things that I have a partner for, and we've been together for about 4 years. And so when I engaged in this lifestyle, she and I had to sit down and really talk about, does she have to do everything on my list with me? Or do I have to do the things that she wants to do? And the answer was no. When I decided to do the Camino, I went to her and said, hey, I'm going to do this. I didn't ask for permission. I said, I'm going to go do this. And she said, oh, I don't know if I want to or not. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure I was asking you to. I think, I think it is kind of something I want to do alone. And she was like, oh, well, I want to go to Spain. And I said, well, if you went to Spain, what would you do? And she said, well, I would like to go to Malaga and Barcelona and Seville and Madrid. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you do those things? I'm going to be gone for a month. It takes a month to walk the Camino. I'm going to be gone a month. Why don't you take a couple of weeks and do that? And she said, yeah, I can do that. I can go. I've traveled by myself alone places. I can do this. And I said, but if you're interested, you still get a certificate of completion for the Camino if you walk the last 100 kilometers. You could join me in Saudia and we could do that together. And she was like, wow, that sounds really good. And I got both of us little bracelets that had the longitude and latitude of Syria, and I gave it to her for the Christmas before we left. And she, we wore them as a reminder to each other that we were going to see each other. And we had a wonderful time when we met, and we got to tell each other all of our stories. And then we got to go experience this thing together.
Yeah, exactly.
So and we stayed in hotels, so she didn't have to stay in hostels, which was good for her. And that's what I think a real relationship looks like when you're talking about a bucket list. There has to be some things that are yours, and just
Definitely.
yours.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's also things that if they overlap, then
Yeah,
man,
and then
that's
that could
beautiful.
be, yeah, exactly, exactly. It's definitely a personal thing, isn't it? Because, like you say, happiness comes from like within ourselves. It's not about, we don't find happiness from somebody else. It's all about,
Mm.
us. But like you say, you can do experiences together that overlap. It's beautiful. It sounds beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Really cool.
But I going along the theme of community, while I was walking, I met a young couple that was engaged from the States, and they were walking the Camino together. And one day at lunch, I started asking them questions about their wedding that was coming up in 4 or 5 months. And they were telling me about it, that they were going to have a small destination wedding down in Costa Rica. And so something that's always been on my bucket list was to crash a wedding. And so I made a joke at the table with all the other people walking with us. So I'm like, we should all go and crash their wedding. And people were like, yeah. And even the couple was like, that'd be hilarious. And a couple of days later, they all started walking faster, and I slowed down so I could meet my partner. And I took a rest day, or a half of a rest day at least. And, you know, so they all wound up in Santiago at the same time, and they had a big party. And the bride to be got a little tipsy and just invited everybody that was there. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. So 2 months later, I'm back home and I'm texting, I'm WhatsApping all the folks that were there. And I'm like, are we going to crash this wedding? Are we going to crash this wedding? And I got crickets, right? There's no noise whatsoever, chirp, chirp, back. And finally, one of them said, I'm sure they convened with each other. One of them texted me back and said, yeah, we all got invited. And I was just like, oh, it's on now. I mean, if it wasn't going to happen before, it's really going to happen now. So I had set up that I was taking a 3-month trip to Europe and some other places, right around the same time of the wedding. And so I convinced the bride that there was no reason for her to ask me.
Yeah, yeah.
She would have, but I was like, oh, I'm going to be in Spain during that time. And I'm sorry, I missed it. And then she's like, oh, okay. So she never asked me once, and so I rerouted my whole trip to take to go to Costa Rica for a week before I went to Europe. And I took my partner with me, and we had like 4 or 5 days of just sun and hanging out and doing some stuff and crossing some other stuff off my list. And then the Friday before the wedding, all the people that we had walked with from the Camino that were there came over to our Airbnb, and we fixed them dinner and had a traditional Costa Rican meal and hung out all night long. And then the next day we showed up at the reception, and it blew the minds of the bride and
Yeah,
groom.
but it is.
So
And that's so
yeah.
cool because you've met all those on there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
again, a continuation of that community,
yeah,
right? It's
exactly.
being intentional. And even my trip back to Europe was it was really dictated by the people that I had met while I was on the Camino, where I went, the locations I went to. When I went back to Pamplona. I had a good friend that I had walked with that lived there, some friends in Burgos that came over and hung out with me for a couple of days. And then I went to Triste, Italy, which is not like, the most well-known spot, at least from the United States perspective, because I had friends in Milan and I had friends there. And then I went to Matera, Italy, to try to get a little bit of some alone time. But when I was in Matera, I took 3 days and 4 days, and I hopped over to Israel and to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem to hang out with a friend of mine that I met on the Camino. And on the way back, I was, from being in Italy, I'm like, well, I might as well throw in a week in the UK and see these 3 or 4 people. And, it just, where I stopped along that trip and the things that I did to cross things off my bucket list was really dictated by those relationships. So I feel like I'm being real honest with my intention for
Yeah,
my list.
absolutely. It sounds like it. It sounds like amazing. So for people who are listening to this that are like getting inspired by your energy, because I know I am, how can you like help them? Because I know you mentioned that you were coaching someone. If people are really sort of stuck with where they're at, and
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that I just released a book called Live Out Your List, Finding Joy Through a Bucket List Lifestyle. It is available in the UK at Amazon.uk for Kindle and paperback. So you can purchase that. It goes through the whole process. It helps you set an intention. It helps you use that intention to create a list. And then the last section, like you doing things in 3, it talks about actually how to manage the list. What do you do first? What are some of the things, some of the strategies you can use to start actually crossing them off? And that's a great place to start. And if you go to my website, the crossingitoffpodcast.com, you can find me there. My mentoring services are there. I have really good fee structure. It's pretty cheap. And I have 20-minute sessions that folks can sign up for free, where we can talk about what your needs are to see if you really need me. And then if you need other sessions beyond that, you can do it. I'm all about just helping as many people as I can. So I keep my prices super low, and you know, if there's no long-term commitments or anything like that, because I want to make sure that I can help as many people as I can. And then I have a podcast called the Crossing It Off Podcast, and it's not about me, but it's a super great show that tells the stories of people that have crossed items off of their list.
yeah,
So you can go there, and each week I interview one person about one item that they've crossed off their list. And you know, it might not be an item that you're interested in if you're looking at the list of the episodes, the titles, but it's, for me, what I've learned is that people get a lot out of the process that people use to
yeah,
coming up with the items, to crossing them off. That's what's the most inspirational part. If you want to come to Burning Man in the Nevada desert, and that's something you want to do, I got a guy that's done that. It's 60 years old, and he crossed that off. If you know, so it has tried to get as many different types of interviews and things people have crossed off their list as possible. So there's travel stuff on there, there's relationship stuff on there, there's skill stuff on there, there's work stuff, there's just all different kinds of things. I've been doing that show for a year. I am in the new year going to start dropping twice a week, so there'll be 2 episodes a week come the first of the year. So that's really exciting, and all that you can find at that website,
yeah. I saw that on your,
crossingitoffpodcast.com.
I think I saw it on your Facebook page or profile, and I saw your book as well. And so for everyone that's listening, well, everything that Roger's just mentioned, the book, the podcast, and your, you know, your socials, if you want to go and follow him. But I think that's really cool with the podcast, because you might see something that's more curious, you know, like you might
Right.
think, actually, I've not even thought about that. I'm
Mm.
curious to know a bit more, you know. So it sounds pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Help people
I've,
add to their list, you know.
yeah. Well, and just to see what's possible, right? I mean,
Mm.
what are some of the things that are possible? So I'm getting ready to, it's not out yet, so I don't want to promise it, but I'm getting ready to interview a young woman that has become a professional mermaid. That was on her bucket list, to become a professional mermaid. It's like, I have no interest in becoming a professional mermaid for multiple reasons, but she did it. Like she's like, I haven't been able to record with her because she's so busy doing all these things. And it's just amazing that she took this passion that she had and really turned it into a career. And I want to share that story with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. It sounds brilliant. I did have a little look, but I haven't really dived in too deep. I'm going to go and check out a bit more. So I'd encourage everybody. I'm sure everybody that's been listening to this has got super sort of excited and started thinking about maybe the things that they're not getting done, or the intention part as well, of why they're actually going to do it rather than just doing random things, you know. And I'm sure if they grabbed a copy of your book, they'd be able to find, you know, that process.
That's the intention.
To help them a bit more. So for those of you watching us on YouTube, hello, everything will be in the comment section. And for those of you listening to us on any of the podcast channels, you'll be able to grab everything that we just mentioned in the show notes. So it's been super fab meeting you. Let's stay in touch, because
yes, please.
You're a really inspirational guy. And I know that, I'm just going to go and check out some of your podcast stuff. You've kind of given me the kick of some of the things I've been talking about that I've not got around to do. One of them is actually, I'm writing a script at the moment for a feature film. And it is difficult.
Yeah.
I'm like procrastinating, and I thought I would have like finished it by now, and I've only done on second act, and it's like I'm like I've got to do this. There's a huge why, but the actual doing it is quite difficult.
Oh yeah, I've never. This is my first book. You know, it was on my bucket list to write a book. I had 3 ideas for books. They're completely different. They're different writing styles. They're different, just absolutely completely different. And this one was the one that eked out first. But now I'm on to working on the other ones. And I'm like, oh, this is so much harder. You know, I was a teacher for so long. I can write a nonfiction how-to book, but you know, when you're talking about a memoir or something, it's a lot different. And you know, and I just, you know, if I can leave with something, it's just that when you do this, when you embrace this as part of your life and your lifestyle, you gain so much confidence, and you just, you shine. And that's what I want for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that leads me into my final question, which is all about freedom. What does freedom mean to you, Roger?
Yeah, freedom to me means that I get to choose my own label.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and you're helping other people do that.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, it's great. I spent so much of my life trying to either get out from underneath the labels that other people had given me, or to live up to them. And I just decided that when I gave myself my own labels, that's when I'm shining, and I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really different to some of the other answers. I love asking this question. I always get on the birthday episode, we cut the answers back to back from different people. It was really interesting here.
Nice. Yeah, I bet.
So it's great to have you and great to connect with you. And next time in the UK, you have to give me a shout.
I will. Thank you, Anna.
Burning Man is on my bucket list. One of my good friends has recently been on the last week. So was it last month? When was it? It feels like it was last month. It's probably
September. Yeah, 1st of September.
Yeah. She lives in California. Well, she's been all over. She was in Dubai actually, but she's done it a couple of times, and it just sounds like an amazing experience.
There's a European version in northeastern Spain called Nowhere, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And it is an official regional event for Burning Man. So you could maybe try that out and see if it's your thing or not.
I'll have to go and check that out first. Yeah, thanks for the tip.
Yeah, no problem.
So yeah, brilliant to meet you and connect with you, and thanks for sharing all your shining knowledge and putting us in that kind of motivational state to kind of really get those stuff done. You know, what is it? What is your phrase? Getting it. What is it?
Oh, live out your list.
Yeah, live out your list.
Yeah, live it out. Don't let it sit in your brain. Don't let it sit on a piece of paper. Live it out.
Yeah, love it. Brilliant. Thanks, Roger. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey. Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.